Good morning, everyone, and welcome to WellMed Charitable Foundation Caregiver Teleconnection Series. Today, we have a very interesting presentation and a very necessary one, managing emotional and behavioral expressions in dementia. And we're so lucky because we have an expert from the James L. West Center for Dementia Care. We've had many presentations from them before, and they're all first class, A+ presentations. They do go really fast, and there are a lot of slides, but we are going to send you the slides afterwards. So you don't need to write everything down. Just, if there's something that you want to ask Tia at the end, you might want to write that down. And with that, Tia, I would turn it over to you, ask you to introduce yourself, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Evelyn. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making time in your very busy schedules. I know that some of you are family caregivers, others are professional, that you're in this camp of dealing with older adults, many who have dementia. So I hope that the things that you receive today will be valuable and you'll have some strategies and tips that you can put into place to help you in your job or help you with your person with dementia at home. Thank you so much again for joining us. My name is Tia Viera, and I work with James L. West Center for Dementia Care. My background is that I worked with the Alzheimer's Association North Central Texas for about 3 years, and I worked with another dementia nonprofit organization in Fort Worth called Dementia Friendly Fort Worth. And then I came to work here at James L. West. I had my own mother with dementia. By the time we figured it out, she was already well into the progression of having dementia. We never did get the definitive diagnosis, but we did the best we could. And the biggest help was getting educated. And I feel like I got educated a little later because I committed lots of errors and made a lot of mistakes along the way. And that's why it's such a joy for me to be an educator at James L. West, to help our families and help the public to understand about how key it is to have good communication with those who have dementia. So I'll just start off and share that I don't know if you know that there are about 35 common behaviors that are related to different types of dementia. It doesn't matter which type it is, that there are some commonalities for people who struggle with cognitive impairment. And so we're going to look at some of the causes for these different behaviors, and we're going to look at what kind of interventions as caregivers that we can have for these common behaviors. I'm going to use some real life examples of people I've worked with and examples from my own mother, who passed away June of this year after 16-year battle. You know that caring for someone with dementia has highs and lows. It's a long, arduous journey with lots of tricky twists, and this is not an easy topic. But by the end of this program, hopefully you will have some creative ways to prevent some of these expressions that are behavioral, and you will find ways to distract, or as we say, redirect attention and intervene for your person with dementia. Let me tell you a little bit about the West Center. We've been around since 1993, so I think that's 32 years now. And we not only provide in our West Center long-term residential care, we have short-term respite care, and we have a short-term rehab center for individuals who have dementia, any type, anywhere in the progression. We also have a senior day program. And we have a new program that started at the beginning of July, and it's James L. West at Home. So we have individuals who can go to the home and offer light housekeeping, meal prep, helping to stay on a medicine schedule, take to doctor's appointments, be that companion. So for those who are not ready to place their loved ones in a long-term care community, that might be an option for you. And then our wonderful education programs that fall under the umbrella now of Dementia IQ. Jamie Cobb Tinsley started the education programs back in 2011 with just a handful of topics. Now she and Holly, they travel extensively throughout Texas and even to other states, and they do topics over 100 different themes that they address. And a lot of that is recorded and placed on our YouTube channel. So go to James L. West Center for Dementia Care, and on demand at your leisure, times that you can fit into your schedule, you can learn a lot. We also have a bilingual education program we call Cerebro Sano, and that's the program that I administer out in the community with brain health, as well as helping caregivers with relevant to their lives, very culturally relevant classes and materials that they can access in Spanish. And I want to be that trusted resource for them out in the community. So let us know how we can help you. I know a lot of you are joining from out of state, and some of you may be in other countries. A lot of what Jamie and Holly do are virtual classes. A lot is done here at James L. West, and then they're also out in the community. Right here are some of our objectives for today. This is going to go rather quickly. We've got lots of material to cover. So we're going to talk about what are these behavioral expressions. We like the word expressions. Talk about warning signs and root causes. How do we respond? And we're going to talk about the compassion and empathy that's so very necessary, and look at strategies for some of the common types of expressions that we encounter. So let's take a look at this. We're going to address this, reframing this term, challenging behaviors. Behaviors has a negative connotation. Behavior is a label somebody wears, and many times a person with dementia gets rejected and even oftentimes has to be withdrawn from a senior care community because they get labeled as behavioral. But what is a behavior? If you look at the definition, it's very neutral. A behavior is just the way that you act or conduct yourself toward other people, the way that you react in response to a stimuli or a situation, right? And so how we behave is actually a form of communication. It's how we're expressing ourselves. And people with dementia, they're doing the best they can with a brain that is not really helpful. It's not helping them. I think, yeah, I moved my screen. I don't know what I did here. So they have a brain that, as we describe it, that's dying. That's what's happening neurologically and cognitively. Their brain is shrinking, and they're losing the actual brain material, and they're having a lot of changes in the way they understand the world around them. And so they are coping the best that they can. This disease has taken away their ability to understand what's going on in the environment and how they fit into their environment and what's happening around them, how they can express their desires, their preferences, their needs, and what they do with the emotions that they're feeling. So some of the expressions that you will encounter will need your direct attention, and you'll need to learn how we talk about being empathetic and validating and solving the problem and redirecting. We're going to go over all that today. And other expressions, they're not that big a deal. We just leave them alone because they're harmless. And so we need to consider that it's our responses that can make the situation better or worse. And about 80% of all of the expressions are either from the caregiver taking the wrong approach and not communicating well, or things that are going on in the environment. And what's underneath that expression is typically an unmet need. It's not going to be something that can be labeled as having a bad behavior. So just an example is, let's say you take your loved one out to a restaurant and ice cream is served for dessert, and the loved one puts ketchup on the ice cream. And so how do you respond? And if you just let it go, because that's not going to cause any harm for that individual to eat ice cream with ketchup on it. But if you respond with, what are you doing? You don't put ketchup on, and then it causes them to react to what you're saying because your approach was not the best, you can end up seeing that there is a reaction. So if it's not causing harm to themselves or to others, let's just let it go. It's not worth having a battle. Studies show that approximately 80% of people with dementia show at least one challenging behavioral expression during their illness. And here are some of the most common: agitation, verbal aggression, physical aggression, wandering, having delusions, believing things that are not based on reality. And a lot of times what goes on along with that is the paranoia and suspicion, and that can cause a lot of these challenging expressions. Depression, and being uninhibited and disinhibited, causing problems. And a lot of these behaviors, these types of expressions come about during personal care time because the person is having trouble understanding what you're wanting them to do and what you're doing for them. It can be misunderstood. So let's take a look at what's happening in the brain of someone who has dementia. This is an example of a brain that has been affected by Alzheimer's disease. And in this illustration, you see a brain on the left that is the normal brain, a healthy brain. Typically, a healthy brain weighs about 3 pounds. And then on the right side of the screen, you see a brain that has been affected all the way to the end stage of Alzheimer's disease. This brain has been ravaged by the effects of the disease and may weigh only 1 pound. So you're comparing a 3-pound brain with a 1-pound brain. And look at the differences. And when I typically ask people in person, they will say things like, the one on the left looks very fluffy and full and juicy, and the one on the right looks dry and is shriveled and has a lot of spaces and gaps in the wrinkles. And then when you take a look at the brain on the bottom, this is like taking a slice of the brain and looking at it, and you see that there are areas that have been affected. There are literally spaces in parts of the brain that are missing. And that's because those neurons or brain cells that make up a whole highway and are all connected, one neuron can connect itself with up to 1 to 10,000 different other neurons. And that highway is responsible for sending and receiving information in our control center that controls our whole body. And so what's happening is that you have sometimes inflammation, sometimes you have conglomerates of protein sticky plaques that are affecting those neurons and the spaces between the neurons that send the chemical messages. And that's resulting in the brain actually dying. It's a brain that's affected by inflammation, by damage to the brain, maybe head injury, and these protein plaques. And so the brain cells are dying. At first, they're not dead. At first, we just call them unreliable because sometimes the messages get through and the person seems to react appropriately. Other times not. And over time, those unreliable cells die out. So you have your brain tissue is shrinking, it is dying out, we're getting gaps in information. So let me show you some areas that oftentimes get affected. So I'm going to start off with this area, more or less here. Let's go here. Okay, this would be more or less, we've got 2 things going on here that are responsible for our being able to record memories. You've got a hippocampus, which is generally called our memory box, and you have the amygdala. And the amygdala is more of the emotional memories. So your hippocampus is going to be facts. Who, what, when, where, all of those things, the answers to those things, like your adventures that you had, who was involved, what did you do? You're going to remember concrete things. But the amygdala records how those things or people made you feel. And with diseases from dementia, they tend to affect more the hippocampus. And that's why we have memory loss. And that's why the person is asking for the same information again and again and telling the same types of stories. That would be the memory box. But the amygdala stays intact longer. So they might not remember the exact thing that happened, but they would remember how it made them feel. So that's important to know because they're constantly trying to figure out what's going on, and they're looking to you as the caregiver, and they're trying to get information. So even though they maybe don't understand exactly what you're referring to, that's a concrete fact, they are relying on things of how those things made them feel and how you make them feel with your interactions and your behavior, your own behaviors toward them. All right, so then I'm going to go to this other area. This is, oops. Thank you for being patient with me. So this would be the prefrontal cortex of the brain. The prefrontal cortex, a lot happens there. This is where we are able to problem solve because we can start at point A and work at B, C, D, E, and then bring it to a conclusion. We can sequence. We also here have our personality. We have our filter where we know what to say in public and what's not appropriate to say in public. We would reserve it for our closest friends. We have the ability to regulate our emotions here and also to control our impulses. We have our time and space in this area where we know where we are at any time and space. And people start losing that many times with dementia, so that time doesn't have the same meaning. In one moment, they're in the present, and one moment, they're living back years ago. So those are being affected. And you can see how that can cause problems. Now let's look at this area. We've got the temporal. We've got both sides of the temporal. Look at the difference between the left and the right. So let me explain this to you, and this is an easy way to remember it. On the left-hand side, we're going to remember the letter L. In the left, L stands for leave. And what you record on the left is your language. Language leaves. So the ability to understand language is being impacted, and the ability to use language. So word finding becomes more difficult. Stringing words together so that you communicate what are your wishes, your desires, your preferences become affected. Even being able to form the words, or understand what is being said, the ability to read, the ability to follow a 30-minute sitcom. You're not able to do that because of the inability to process that language that you are hearing. So left leaves, but on the right-hand side, that is right stands for rhythm, and it stands for rhyme. And what goes along with rhythm and rhyme? Music. So those tend to stay longer. So remain is our word with R. Rhythm, rhyme, music. So for someone with dementia who is going through the progression, they may get to the point where it's comforting for them to tap or hum or repeat something over and over again, that can be comforting because they're losing the other abilities. So you can see how this can affect someone. They're not able to understand. They're especially not able to reason. So this prefrontal cortex area, that's where you have the good judgment and the reason. And unfortunately, that's the biggest mistake we make as a caregiver, is appealing to reason. And the person is finding it harder to be able to understand, make sense of, and reason. And that's what we keep doing again and again, instead of realizing we have to give that up. And they have trouble processing what's being said and following through with the requests, like I said, with the sequencing. Overstimulation can affect someone if there's too much noise or confusion, and communication is breaking down. They're having trouble expressing their needs. They can be very sensitive to loud, sudden noises or too quick movements going on around them. All right, they can misinterpret what is being said or done. No one likes to feel like you're being treated like a child and you're being told what to do, that you don't have the ability to make decisions at all for yourself. So we need to be very careful and recognize that that is something, especially in the early stage, you want to take away someone's freedom to choose and let them have the, as much as you can, the independence. You don't want them to feel useless or they can't do something. That loss of control is going to have that impulse that you don't want, and that emotional regulation will not be there when someone feels that loss of control. Also, if there's a conflict with family members or other people living with them, then regular conflicts can take place, but now there's no filter, or it's a decreased filter. So you may have some of those expressions of maybe cursing and exasperation, or words that normally they would be able to keep under wraps. And also keep in mind the desire for a familiar and safe space. Maybe they're feeling that anxiety of not being in their home that they remember from the past. And keep in mind as well that home is often more of a concept than a place. Home for someone may represent good times, when I felt like I had control, when my life was manageable, and I want to return to that. So all of this can bring up emotion, and people often misinterpret what you're saying to them or what you're trying to do to them. An example of that we mentioned with the ADLs, especially with hygiene. So if you've come in and you are an attendant and you're there to help a person undress for a shower, that might be misunderstood as sexual activity. Also, a good thing to remember is that where is the task? Where does it fall? Is it a task that's too difficult for them to do? That can produce frustration. And we need to try to aim at that sweet spot where it's something that they're able to do. It is not below their abilities so that they're bored and then they would have the desire to wander and find something to do. But you want to look at what is something that they're able to do and that they can feel a sense of accomplishment in having it done. Let's understand the why behind some of these expressions, okay? Being in a new environment is a big one. Moving from a home that they've lived in for many years, even if they've gone into the home of a son or a daughter, keep in mind that it takes 72 hours to adjust to a new place, to a new home, to a new room, to a new community. And any of us takes normally 28 to 30 days to make a new habit, or if we're trying to break a habit. That's an example. So that can be something to take into consideration and have empathy and compassion for that person. An undiagnosed pain, such as a headache, toothache, blister. So be aware of that. Be checking on what could be causing the problem. There may be pain and they may not be able to tell you it hurts. So you're going to look at how we're going to talk about that hopefully at the end. That'll be one of the things we address. Physical problems like shortness of breath or a UTI, any other kind of infection. Some of these seniors are taking 18 to 20 different medications, and it could be that two medications do not interact well together, and they may be having side effects and causing them problems with their ability to understand more than usual. Boredom or loneliness, I mentioned that. So we want to keep people occupied, stimulated, things that they enjoy, a challenge that they can arise to, depending on where they are in the progression. Be mindful of your approach as a caregiver. Your negative approaches can result in these unwanted expressions, and sundowning, where toward the end of the day, the exhaustion is there, and many times the anxiety and the desire to wander, or we'll talk about that sometimes that increases. Here are some typical expressions that you might encounter through the stages. So let's look. We're going to divide the progression of dementia into only 3 stages. I know there are scales that go up a lot higher than that, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to look at early, middle, and late, early, moderate, late. And we're going to look at what kind of strategies we can use as a caregiver. So in the early stage, you may have people who are in denial, or they may have anosognosia, which means they're not able ever to come to terms with the fact that they have a diagnosis or have an illness. And this applies across the board to any kind of sickness, not just dementia. They may be apathetic toward activities or to other people and not able to tap into other people's emotions. They may repeat a lot, have impaired decision making, may show depression and anxiety. So what are we going to do in this stage? We're going to try to keep things as normal as possible. We need a structure. Routine is good for people with dementia. We want them to be able to make choices, but we're going to limit choices and not have open-ended choices, maybe 2 or 3 choices that you can live with as a caregiver, but let them have that autonomy that builds the self-esteem. Try to stay away from arguments. I guarantee you, you're going to get into a battle that you will never win. So do not argue with a person with dementia, and do not try to convince them of something that you see as is real when they see it a different way. They're looking through a different lens. Their perspective is very different. And the best you can do is try to enter their reality. Focus on their feelings more than their words. Focus on helping them to be independent, simplify their environment, and constantly give them positive reinforcement. They're going to forget that you already gave them that compliment and that encouragement, so you've got to do it on a regular basis. Now, in the middle stage, you might have some people with a desire to wander. Sometimes they're looking for something to do to occupy them. Sometimes they're trying to return to something that was in their routine or their pattern long ago, like picking up the kids from the bus or going to work, whatever it was. Aggression, sometimes sleep changes, and more resistance to the activities of daily living. In this stage, we're going to be supportive. We're going to use redirection, be mindful that we have to slow down as caregivers, keep things simple, hands-on help, step-by-step instructions, use visual reminders and cues. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's talk about providing visual and verbal cues for someone who is needing to start their day. So you're going to start them by guiding them through all of the tasks and the steps that are involved in getting ready for the day with getting dressed and brushing their teeth. So the first thing are the visual reminders. An example is setting the stage. So you are not going to just tell someone it's time to get ready, go get dressed. Instead, you're going to prep. So you're going to lay out the clothes and put them in the order that they'll put them on. Like you'll have a shirt on top of the pants, and remind yourself to just do a scan, and you're going to remove clutter, unnecessary clutter in the room. An example of that would be in the bathroom. You're going to take out toothpaste and the toothbrush, but you don't need the lotions and the shampoos and the soaps and all of that. So clear off the counter to make it simple. Use labels and pictures. So you could put a picture of a toothbrush and a toothpaste on the mirror near the sink. Or if it's getting ready with their clothing, on the full-length mirror, put a picture of someone fully dressed. And now you're going to start with your verbal reminders. Your verbal reminders are going to be simple. You're going to break the task down into steps, even one-step commands. So instead of saying, let's get ready now, you would say, it's time to put on your shirt. And you're going to provide cues. You're going to remind them slowly, patiently, with a calm voice, with an encouraging tone in your voice. Now it's time to brush your teeth. And you may start to do gestures to show them what they're going to do, or put on your clothes, and you're putting on your clothes so they can mirror you and follow you. You're giving them a better example to understand what you're saying as language has broken down. Stay away from complex questions. So you want to give them yes and no questions, not open-ended questions. You're not going to say, what do you want to wear today? Instead, it's, how about the green shirt? Or would you like the blue shirt? You're going to give them fewer choices. And then physical guidance by pointing and modeling. If they seem stuck, point to the next item of clothing or demonstrate it with a gesture. And if they're having trouble mechanically, like taking the toothbrush, you can do hand over hand. I highly recommend that you go check out some videos on YouTube by Teepa Snow, Teepa Snow, and she has positive approach to care. And she is an occupational therapist that's very well known in the industry, very hands-on for the caregivers. You can use hand over hand to help them with their toothbrush or with buttoning their buttons. And so when you have a combination of these verbal and visual cues, the good thing is it's tapping into different regions of the brain and giving you a better opportunity. And constantly validating and providing positive reassurance. And in the late stage, we've got more of the repetition. You might be in constant repetition with a movement or a tapping, with more withdrawal, sleeping longer, having more agitation to care, and harder time following even two-step instructions. So we're going to appeal to comfort. That's our key word, comfort. We're going to use music, and music needs to be their music. Keep in mind, we form our music list usually between the ages of about 10 and 29. That's music of our time. That's our culture. So don't play your music for them. Play their music. Use nonverbal communication, a lot of touch, a lot of redirecting the attention, validating, trying to meet them where they are, refocusing, and of course, simplifying again the environment. Well, let's look at the ABCs of these expressions. This is a model to help us to look at these expressions of behavior and look at why they happened, and what was the result, and then to examine how you can do it differently. We've got three, A, B, and C. Antecedent, that's something that came before. So you're going to look at what happened right before this upsetting behavior. And they have the word behavior in the middle. I can't change that because I didn't create the model. Even though I say I like expressions instead of behavior, that's a part of the model and you'll understand, right? What is the behavior, which would be the upsetting action? And what is the consequence, the events that are happening as a consequence or as a result? The ABC method will help you to identify what are some triggers that are upsetting your loved one. And if you know what the trigger is, you can avoid it in the future, and it'll help you decode what is that resistance that you're coming against. As the disease progresses and changes, so will these expressions and what triggers them. Um, all of us have different likes and dislikes and preferences. We have habits, we have things that don't change about us typically over the years, and we're going to react because of those. Sometimes we have pet peeves, right? So we know our person. And it may be that we can predict what's going to bother them, what kinds of triggers they're going to have. But it may also be that something that never bothered them in the past is bothering them now. So it's a little tricky, but you have to try to be like a detective and figure this out and look at the situation from the viewpoint of the person with dementia to try to figure out what is causing the behavior. So, an example of that would be before the diagnosis of dementia, was that person a worrier, a worrywart? If so, then that might be exacerbated with dementia, and their anxiety level may be even increasing. So, keep in mind that the problems that the person with dementia faces are because of the dementia. It's not because of them. It's not that they're trying to give you a hard time. We always say that. They're not trying to give you a hard time. They're having a hard time. If they were trying to give you a hard time, they wouldn't have dementia because they'd be able to manufacture something and have a plan and put it into place. And a person with dementia would have a hard time doing that because that area of the brain is affected, that prefrontal cortex. They're having memory loss, disorientation with time and space, the inability to understand what's going on, and the ability to produce language to state their needs, and so on. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I'm a teenager and I'm not a morning person, and I have a little brother who taunts me and makes a lot of noise in the morning, and we're having a fight in the bathroom, and he's happy, chipper, singing, playing loud music. I may be really upset with him. I may have a strong emotion, but I can manage my emotions, and I can hold back on reacting because I have a healthy brain. So I might mutter under my breath, "You are such a jerk, shut up." And he might not ever hear that because I kept it under wraps. But a person who has that desire to do things later and have a slower kind of morning, if we rush them around in the morning, and if it's someone like my mom that would have to wake up and have her coffee along with her newspaper and then have time to take her time in the bathroom to have her bowel movement, and if she's not able to do that, then that might result in an awful word coming out of her mouth that wasn't customary for her, or a kick or a slap or a bite, right? Because I know my mom, and I know that her care should be included to keep things the way that as much as I can with her preferences and her routines. So keep in mind too, they're taking longer to process what's going on, and they're having trouble controlling their emotions, and they're having more trouble understanding what's going on. Let's look at this again with the ABCs. So the antecedent, the events that happen right before the challenging expression. So what happened? What was happening right before that upsetting expression? And it may be something that's been brewing all week. Maybe it's Christmas time and their routine is upended and they've got lots of visitors coming in and they don't understand, and there's a lot of commotion, and they're having trouble placing people that have always been in their lives, but now they're not remembering because they're living in the past. And it might be that you're seeing some of these upsetting expressions. Where is it happening? What's going on in the environment? When does it happen? Who is involved? What makes it worse? Why? So you're going to keep a checklist. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you're a family. For years and years, your mother and father invited everybody over on Sunday afternoon after church. That's been your routine. And so now your family's grown. You have kids of your own and grandkids. So now when you get together, you have a lot more commotion. And your dad used to love to gather the family together, but your dad has dementia. And you're noticing now that he's starting to swear a lot more. He's starting to lose his temper, and he even can get kind of aggressive. So you look at it, look at what's different, what's happening in the environment. What if You had a family that have a lot of active children and they're tearing through the house with those shrill voices that they're yelling and screaming and laughing. And now the father with dementia, your father, is not handling it well. So you have to examine that. How could you have a modification? Because the result is he's upset, he's having these outbursts, and then the consequence is that nobody in the family's having a good time anymore. So you're going to have to modify it. Maybe the kids can run around outside, but all of the parents know they keep the kids under control. It might be that you make sure that you remove your father into a quiet place and involve him in an activity when you start to sense the aggression. So you've got to figure out who it's happening around, where it's happening, what's involved, what makes it worse. Also consider these things. What were their preferences and pet peeves, their life patterns, their history, their personality? Try to see things from their perspective. Where are they in the progression of dementia? Are they early, middle, late? What's their confusion level? What are they able to understand? Are they having trouble with their memory moderately or pretty severely? What about the language breakdown? What about their senses? Are they able to take in information from their five senses? Are they having a lot harder time with their brain understanding what they're perceiving? How are they feeling at that time? Health issues can have a big problem. UTI, a urinary tract infection, can spike their symptoms of disorientation and confusion. Changes in medicine, pain, fatigue, emotional and psychological state. What are you communicating? Are you exhausted? Are you losing your patience? Are you frustrated? Do you have anger, not directed to the person, but over something else, but you're bringing that into your communication with the person? Because keep in mind that amygdala is still there, okay? They're reading you. They're looking to try to figure things out, and they're not paying so much attention to the words you're speaking, but what's showing on your face, your tone of voice, and your body language, your nonverbal communication, and the environment. Pay attention to the environment. Some people are very sensitive to noise and to too much light or too low a light. What's the temperature in the room? Are they comfortable? How does it look, sound, and feel? What's going on around them? And look at the time and the patterns of their day. We should always have inside of the time, we need to have productive time where they have a sense of accomplishment and there's value for them. We need to have time that's fun. We also need to have time that's restorative where they recharge. And always we want to aim at wellness and care, not just for them, but for us as a caregiver. Here's an example of going through the ABCs.
You are on mute.
Yeah, you got muted for some reason.
Since the slide came up, we haven't heard you.
I don't know how that happened. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I'm sorry I put myself on mute. All right, you haven't heard any of the story yet? Okay, Mary's the caregiver. Mary overslept. Now she's in a hurry. Her husband's Rob. Rob has a doctor's appointment, so she wants Rob to get out of bed, take a shower, eat, and get dressed before the driver comes to take him to his appointment. Because of her late start, Mary yanks off the bed covers and yells at Rob to get up. But he does not understand her words. So he's looking at her and he's trying to read her. He's trying to read her body language, her tone of voice, her facial expressions, and she's all angry and she's all flustered. And so he pulls the covers back up and she gets mad and she says, "I'm in charge here." Mary drags Rob out of bed and rushes to get him dressed. Now he must balance on one leg rather than sit down to pull on his pants. This is not their usual routine when Mary takes her time helping Rob get ready for the day. What happens? That's the antecedent. Here's the behavior. Rob loses his balance because Mary's rushing him so much. He grabs her arm tight for support. He doesn't let it go. She yells. He gets scared. He grabs on even tighter. And now he's digging his nails into her arm. The consequence, a bad consequence. Mary loses control and she smacks Rob in the face. He hits her back. Mary thinks that he is fighting, though it may be that he's just afraid and doing to her what she did to him. One problem leads to others, and now Mary is worried that Rob will hurt her again, and she questions whether she can care for him at home and wonders whether Rob must go to a nursing home. Mary gets scared and slaps Rob, and this is something that Mary's never done before. This is uncustomary. How could this be avoided in the future? And first of all, I want to say, if you've ever been in any kind of similar situation, it would be very easy to take on guilt and feel terrible about yourself as a caregiver. You have to forgive yourself just as you would forgive someone that's telling you the story. Tomorrow's another day. You've got to make a change. But it's okay. You've got to forgive yourself. You're not going to do this perfectly. Like I've heard said before, we're going to take that S off of our shirt. We are not superwomen. We're going to make mistakes along the way. So Mary learned that because Rob has Alzheimer's, he can't be rushed. She should realize how her actions made the situation worse. So in the future, if that should ever happen again, she can call the doctor's office and postpone it or reschedule the appointment. That's better than expecting that Rob's going to have to change up his routine so much. So she can make a list of what happened just before this behavior, look for the causes of what went wrong, make adjustments to avoid it in the future. And she's going to think about her actions because remember, 70% of the reason for these expressions are either the caregiver's communication techniques or what's going on in the environment. She can use the ABC to help Rob be more cooperative in the future and figure out how better to manage the situation. Let's talk about responding with compassion. Compassion, and the main word is empathy. Empathy is different from sympathy. Sympathy is looking in from the outside, feeling sorry for somebody. Empathy is moving into a situation, trying to understand, trying to see from a person's perspective. So the ABC method is going to help us identify the patterns and triggers. We're going to modify the environment. We're going to modify the routine, and we're going to intend to validate. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Validating is when you're trying to understand someone and you're giving them the impression that you do understand. You enter into their world. You come alongside as their ally, as their advocate. We're in this together. You're not alone, and give them the feeling that they're safe. And then you're going to redirect them. So we're going to talk about that, validating their emotions. We might not be able to understand their emotions, but we're going to try to understand their emotions instead of maybe the words that they're speaking, find out what's underneath it. And you would say something like that. I can see that you are so frustrated. I would be frustrated too. That's going to let someone know that their emotions are valid, right? Then you're going to redirect them onto a new task or thought. Go to their world. We have a 3-pound brain. We can do that. We can go to their world. We can't expect that they come to ours. We're going to use compassion. We're going to take the word remember out of our vocabulary because they do not remember that they do not remember that they do not remember. We're not going to use the word remember. We're not going to set up something like, do you remember me? Do you remember what my name is? Or think really hard, Dad. I think you can remember, because that's just cruel. It's gone. They do not remember. The word okay is really good in case someone is telling a story. I'm going to explain this. Sometimes someone will feel really convinced in their mind about something that's not based on reality at all. Or it may be based on a little negative reality, and then they've added a lot to it to make a story that's not true. An example of this, my mother, highlight of her life was singing in the Billy Graham choir. She would talk about it for years. And then that story about the Billy Graham choir became one, instead of just I sang in the choir, one day they handed me the microphone and I sang a solo in front of the thousands of people in the stadium. Well, that was her new story. That's called confabulation. So we do not correct someone with dementia. We enter into their world. We don't have to agree with what they're saying, but we don't want to set up a battle that's going to result in an expression of behavior that's unwanted. A good way to do that is to use the word okay. The word okay is neutral and you can just keep it going. Someone says, I do not want to stay here. I have a house. My house is paid for. And you say, okay. And I'm going to go to my house. Okay. And you let them rant. You let them go through whatever emotion they have. And you're just responding with okay. You're not agreeing with them. You have a pleasant look on your face and a pleasant tone. And you're helping to diffuse the situation because they get the joy to know that you're listening to them and that you believe them, whether or not you agree. So you're going to use the word okay, 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 and not appeal to reason. The more you try to explain why my thinking is wrong, or I don't need to be worried about something or agitated about something, the worse it's going to be, because that's going to make me feel like you think that I'm going crazy. Because a lot of times people with dementia will say that, you think I'm going crazy. You don't believe me, because we all trust what our brain is telling us. And if brain's
That's
not working
exactly
for us, that's not helping us. And consider your actions and not just your words. Like I said, they respond to body language, facial expressions, tone of voice. A smile goes a long way. Try not to take any of this personally. Try to remain calm and try to be accepting. Find that place that you can agree with them, not correcting or arguing. Look for opportunities that you can agree. An example would be, I want my keys. I want to drive my car. Instead of saying, no, you can't have your keys. Yes, I'm going to make sure you get your keys, and I'm going to make sure you get your keys back as soon as the mechanic finishes with the car. And then redirect their attention. What's the first thing that we're going to do when we get the car back? Go with that to produce some joy. Validate their feelings and emotions, then you're going to fix it with a therapeutic story. A therapeutic story is also called a fiblet. It's not a lie. God knows the difference. A lie is intended to deceive and you're getting something out of it, and it's a selfish motive. With our therapeutic stories, we are intending to bring a calm and a peace and help our loved one. An example of a therapeutic story, son is there with his father, and the father says, I am furious. The bank is transferring money from my account to yours. You are stealing my money. And instead of saying, I can pull up the account, I can show you the, what do you call them? That you get statements, instead of appealing to reason or taking it personal and say, I would never do such a thing. Why would you say that? I've always been a good son. That's going to get you nowhere. You're appealing to reason. Instead, join them in their emotion. I can't believe that. That makes me mad too. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And then pretend like you make a call to the bank, rail and rant at the bank. I expect that you fix this. My father doesn't like it and I don't either. Well, then you were the ally. You came alongside to fix it. You went to their world. You didn't get emotional in a way that you took it personal. You got emotional with the emotion they had to diffuse the situation. And then you are going to distract them, or we call it redirect. So you've validated them and you've joined them in their emotion, you fixed the problem, and now you're going to redirect. Good things to use to redirect are food, especially sweet, our taste buds. We've got sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. And do you know the one that remains the longest when the other ones have diminished is the taste bud that controls sweet. So that's why older adults are drawn to sweets. Not that the sugar is good, but it's great to have that as a tool in your tool belt when you need it. Also, children, especially babies, and pets, animals, baby animals, we all carry around our screens, our iPads, our phones, whatever. Bring something up, put on a video, and of course, music. These are good things to use to distract. Responding with compassion. You've got to be an active listener. More emphasis on the emotional aspect of what is being said or done than the actual words. You're going to connect. And when you connect with them, you're showing respect and dignity. You're listening with empathy. You're not doing other things. You're giving them your full attention, and you're showing that respect and dignity so they feel valued. One of the things I was going to say, when language breaks down, Sometimes people have problems with forming words and sentences. And sometimes it gets to the point where it's what we call word salad, where it might be very fluent, but you don't understand what those syllables are, or those words that are strung together. You understand the individual words, but they don't make sense together. That's okay. The goal is to have this communication with the person and make it a fun time for them. So you would say things like, really? Wow. Tell me more. You don't say. I can see you're excited about it. And then what happened? Just going to keep it going, even if it's ta ta pa pa, blah, whatever. It's an experience that you're having with the person, and you want to give them that joy. You can reminisce about the past, but take the word remember out. I'm not going to say, do you remember when we went to the lake and the kids caught all those fish? Instead of do you remember, say, I was just thinking about the time. You're giving them the memory. You're not asking them if they have the memory. You're providing it for them to enjoy with you. So whether or not they remember it, they can enjoy it. If you say, do you remember, that might throw up a wall, because there's sometimes defensiveness over problems with their memory, as you can imagine. Responding with compassion. When choosing activities, let's look at things that are going to bring joy and be the highlight of their day, things that bring them purpose and meaning. So look at things that they can do and they can do well, that are not above their ability. It's hard sometimes to get right in that sweet spot. You're not going to be so concerned with what is the output or the achievement. So that, like, for example, a lady that I used to take care of, she had dementia and she loved to play cribbage. And we would play cribbage. But as her dementia progressed, it got to where she really couldn't remember the rules of the game. But it brought her joy to pull out the wooden cribbage and have her move the pegs. So we just played it a different way. We modified it. Encourage involvement in daily life. So what can they do for the rest of the household? Can they help set the table? Can they stir something when it's time for meal prep? Can they help with laundry? Maybe in the early stage, they can do the whole thing, but there are a lot of steps to laundry. So it may end up being take the clothes out of the washer and put them in the dryer and start the dryer. And then in the later stages is maybe fold something not complicated like a shirt, but maybe something like a rectangle of a pillowcase or a towel. Do their favorite activities as much as you can. Think about what they always enjoyed doing and try to do it on a smaller scale. If it's a man who loved to play golf, maybe get one of those putting greens that you can put in your backyard or in your den. If it's someone who loved plants and now can't go outside with the plants, you could purchase this mat from Amazon, and it sits on a table and it has snaps on each corner, and bring in a potted plant, and the soil can go all in the mat and not get on the table or fall on the floor, and you can repot a plant. Do favorite activities. By the way, there something on the internet you can go look at, 101 things to do with your person with dementia. And you can have a list and find things, because that's always a challenge. What can I do with my person to keep them occupied and keep them stimulated? Can take in mind their physical limitations, tailor their activities, and find things that you all can enjoy doing together. All right. Here are some common expressions. Agitation, sundowning, wandering, and communicating pain and combativeness. And we are already at the end of the hour, are we not?
Close.
I can't believe that it has flown like it did. Let me see if I can cover this really quickly. So with agitation, here are a lot of things that would describe irritation: being irritable, stubborn, nervous, pacing, moody, unable to sleep, aggressive, sometimes cursing, threatening language. Those curse words, we all know them. We just have a filter that tells us not to use them. But sometimes with people with dementia, that's the word that they pull out. That word is there. When your loved one is agitated, remember that they're not in control of their emotions and don't understand what's happening. So try not to make it a big deal, because if you make it a big deal, it becomes an even bigger deal. Try to diffuse the situation, like we talked about with the validation and solving the problem and redirection. Stay calm, use your voice, soft voice, use touch. And sometimes you need to take a time out and take a few breaths. And they're looking, like I say, they're going to mirror what you're showing on your face and your tone of voice many times. Many times people with dementia are sensitive to their environment, so pay attention to what's going on around them. Change is hard for anybody who is aging. It's hard for me. It's hard for a lot of us, even more so with a person who has dementia. When you feel like you're losing things all the time, a lot of emotions can come up as a result, like not being able to drive anymore, or they think they're not able to take care of their kids because they have that desire to go take care of the kids. So learn and avoid triggers. The being pushed or pressured to remember or perform an activity that's beyond their ability, that can make them agitated, and feeling lonely and not having enough stimulation or interaction with others. So bring other people into their world, or plan coffee dates or time away from the home if that works for your person where they are in their progression. Routine is really important. The stimulation and rest is really important. Make sure that you keep up your dental exam for that person, especially if they have on their dentures. Could be rubbing a sore spot and they might have pain. Let them be as independent as possible. Provide opportunities for socialization. Think about how much caffeine that they're taking in, and sugar, because those oftentimes can result in having more anxiety and agitation as a result. A good thing is to keep pictures of people that they love around them and things that they consider beautiful, their belongings and objects and pictures. Always use gentle touch, reassuring voice, use music, and don't ignore the behavior if it's something you need to respond to. And like I said, respond by validation, solving the problem and redirecting them. Okay, I think we're out of time. I want to give a little time for questions. You all will receive on your slides several of these, I think all 5 of them, and you can look through them. And there may be other expressions of behavior that you wanted me to address today that I didn't. But final tips, keep in mind that stress is contagious. So manage your own stress. Do that deep breathing that comes from the belly. A good way to do it is breathe in through the nose, hold it for a few seconds, blow it out through the mouth. And I learned yesterday a good thing to do is to purse your lips when you're letting it out, because that makes it come out even more slowly. Manage your own stress. Take time for yourself. Make sure you get some respite. I know it's not easy. Call upon other people to help. See what you can do to be able to take time for yourself with breaks. Support groups. We have 3 here. One of them meets here every Friday from 11 to 12. And then we have 2 virtual groups, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And always remember that an expression is a form of communication. Remember your ABCs. Remember that we have a 3-pound brain. They have a 1-pound brain. They can't change. We're the ones who can change. And we need to change the ways we respond and communicate. All right, a person with dementia is not a problem to be solved, but is a person to be loved. And I'm going to put up here on the screen, these are the contact information for both Jamie and Holly, because they're the ones that do most of our English language instruction. So I'm going to put these here, and you receive these in your slides. Please feel free to reach out to them. If you want to ask me a question, you can ask me a question, go through them, and I'd be happy to answer. So I know we're close to the hour. Let me know what we have, Evelyn, that we might want to address.
I think most of it was just telling you about your mic being off, and are we going to get the slides? And Minerva's told everyone that you will. And I can't tell you what a fabulous presentation. Oh my gosh. And thank you so much. I also want to say that it's, you didn't have time to touch on it, but that a little, except for a little bit. But it's so important that you caregivers take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Stress is internal because we have all that responsibility that we carry, that we heap on ourselves. And we have that guilt that we carry that we shouldn't carry. We have a lot of stress internally, and then we have the stress outside for people who have an opinion and want to tell us what they think we need to know. And we're a people pleaser. We sometimes worry about that. And then all of the stresses that are beyond our control that are just a part of this, that come with caring for someone with dementia. We've got to learn how to manage our stress, because we cannot avoid it. Stress is just a part of life. But if we don't avoid our stress, it will affect us. And you've seen the statistics of the number of caregivers who pass away before their person with dementia because they've neglected their own self-care. They've not gone to their appointments for their doctor, their dentist. They are not taking breaks to be with people, so they're isolated and they're lonely. So many things can affect your health. Please take care of yourselves. Love yourselves.
For people over the age of 65, it's almost 50%. It's amazing.
Daunting.
It is. And I think the other thing is that people forget that, their own health because of time. They forget to take care of their socialization because of time. All of the things that make them whole and happy, they need to remember those.
And you are just as important as the person you are caring for. Every bit as important.
Yes. Well, I can't thank you enough, and you have many, many thank yous on the chats. And let's see, I think Minerva is going to send you, let me tell you, everybody, this. If you're not registered, we need you to register with Minerva. Otherwise, you won't get the slides. And that would be a misfortune because there's so much good information. But you can call Minerva at 866-390-6491. And you need to do that today. Register today, 866-390-6491, because then you'll get the monthly calendar in addition to the resources, which is always a really great thing. And I want to thank every single one of you today for being online and for listening to this fabulous presentation. The link to the survey is, I don't know what happened to that. The survey should still be up. Do people see the survey?
Is it not showing anymore? Because I still show it active.
I don't see it.
Mine is up on my screen.
Oh, okay, good.
Let me do this real fast.
Thank you all for participating. Thank you for what you do every day. And Tia,
Hi there.
you do a
Hi there. I
fabulous
just
job.
have. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Hi. I'm so sorry, but I'm on the phone call. I'm not on Zoom. I just have a quick question or two. Earlier, y'all were saying about, I guess on YouTube, Jay West has a YouTube channel, and then also the 101 things to do with my dementia person, and then I guess a T Snow also has, I guess something on YouTube. That's what I got to write in real quick. Will that information be on the slides that you'll be emailing as well?
No.
Or can it be added?
But I can tell you real quick.
Okay, so I can just, yeah. Okay, so I got JL West.
No, if you go to YouTube, you're going to type in James L. West Center for Dementia Care. And the occupational therapist that I referenced that has so many videos online is Teepa, and she spells her name T like in Tom, EEPA, and her last name is Snow, just like the snow on the ground. And the other thing, you're right, just Google 101 things to do with a person with dementia. You can word it lots of different ways. There are various organizations that have produced lists like that.
Thank you for asking. Okay, folks, I'm going to stop the recording, but I want to thank you. I want to thank Minerva for all her help, and Tia and your organization for the kind of support that they've given to the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And I also want to thank every person here on today for what you do. It's a gift, such a gift. And now I am going to turn off the recording and thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation for giving us all these wonderful gifts. And thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Be well.
Bye. Thank you so much.